Right. So first thing first, again, thank you so much for your enthusiasm in the chat, and then also for our speakers who I know it's pretty early on your end, 9 a.m. That can be tough, but again, thank you so much for taking the time out, and welcome everyone to our U.S. College Application Masterclass hosted by EduCrate, which is an ed tech startup that myself and also my co-founder we're currently building. And if you haven't scanned the QR code, we would love for you to give it a go, because on there you'll be able to find more future insights down the line. So just a quick overview of EduCrate as well as for the event today. So basically, EduCrate, as I mentioned, it's an ed tech startup, and it's built by IB graduates because, well, I did IB back then in 2022, and I graduated from an IB school in Hong Kong. So essentially what EduCrate is about is basically we are trying to create that one-stop solution for all you need as an IB student. Everything from how to navigate IB, how to write perfect essays, how to even conquer different kind of uni application, and so on and so forth. Because back then we have seen that students struggle a lot in terms of getting connected with alumni to get firsthand insights, as well as getting good quality learning resources and materials in a short time manner. So we want to overcome those information gaps and also inefficiencies, and that's why we created this. So in terms of our panelists today, so we are really honored to have Sheila from Cornell, Ivy from NYU Stern, and also Hanan from UPenn. So the event, in terms of the agenda for today, we are going to start with a bit of introductions from each of our speakers. They'll be giving you an overview of their previous background, as well as how they navigate their application processes. And then we'll have an open panel discussion followed by a Q&A to answer any questions you have. And in the meantime, if you have any questions in mind, you can always pop it into the chat. Our panelists can always give you a hand there, or we can go through them in our Q&A session. If that's all good, we'll move on. Okay? Right, so first thing first, I think it's Sheila. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sally. So just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Sheila. I'm currently a sophomore, so second-year student at Cornell University. And Cornell is located at upstate New York, so it's in New York State, but not in New York City. So some history or like background of how I get to here. Wait. I was originally from mainland China, and I attended UWC with Sally. And now, yeah, as I mentioned, I'm here in the US. I'm back in the time from the past 2 years in IB. I graduated IB as well as high school in 2022 May. And these are the subjects I did. And I didn't mention it, but I also did my EE in Chinese literature. Regarding the process of me selecting the IB courses, as well as like selecting uni major, the ones to apply to, as well as the ones I'm sticking with right now. My biggest advice personally is to follow what you actually like and to try to find out what you actually like. And I couldn't find a better way but to highlight 4 key persons in representing each area that I'm passionate about. So starting from the left, it's Po Sher. She is a current graphic designer at a graphic design agency here in the US called Pentagram. And she's actually the one who designed the whole typography and font system for the NYC Metro. And the second person is a famous economist from Austria called Joseph Schumpeter. And he is the one who developed a theory of creative destruction that got me interested into market and econ. And the third person is a Chinese artist called Xu Bing, because on the side, I also do visual art. As you can see, I also chose visual art in my IB. And lastly is Albert Camus. I actually get to know this philosopher and and the writer from my course in taking Chinese literature back in IB. And he was actually the one, I guess, helped me the most in terms of life morals, as well as how to navigate different aspects of life from his theory of existentialism. And since my interest is so diverse, that led me to my pursue here education in US, where a more of a liberal arts background as well as interdisciplinary education is more encouraged. So can transition to the next slide. Okay, so some questions they asked me to answer. First is what are the highlights of my current uni? So, Cornell as one of the Ivy League school, we're different from our peers since that I really like our founding mottos from our founder Israel Cornell as well as AD-wide that any person, any study. Really, I feel the actual freedom that I sort of had before that I can pursue whatever interest I have. So for instance, I'm taking a second major, and there are also countless majors, colleges, and minors that's offered here. And for example, we have very strong architecture program, but also have very strong humanities, business, as well as engineering. So you can really find anything you like here. That's what I'm passionate about. And secondly is, although we're sort of larger scale university and private schools, but you still get this tight-knit community and faculty cohort experience. Personally, I had a great time as well as like learning experience from my faculty advisor, who is currently a dean at my college as well. I got a lot of insight from her and helping me navigate through the whole uni process. And lastly is we're located in Upstate New York. That means we get beautiful snow and beautiful sceneries around the year that I can see the changes of 4 seasons. That was not really common in Hong Kong, obviously. And yeah, so why this major? I'm currently taking a major called Applied Economics and Management. Essentially, that's one of the two majors that's offered in terms of a business school here at undergraduate level. Another major, so if some of you guys know, is the hotel administration that's offered here at Cornell. And the reason why I ended up picking this as my second major is I always had a huge passion for e-com marketing, especially in terms of consumer insights, behavior choices, why people choose and buy what to buy, as well as broader business management and market economy aspects. And my primary major is here rooted in communication, and it's a more newer interdisciplinary human science, in which emerges between all the aspects of media study, technologies, psychology, sociology, as well as user experience design. So really by pursuing this two major, I was able to meet the majority of my interests across the board. And lastly, in terms of overall background, I believe different from applying to UK or other places, US really emphasize you as a whole person. So rather than excel in your academics, you also need to present yourself outside of the learning environment as well. So personally, regarding some highlights of the activities I did back in preparing for uni, I did bilingual debate in English and Mandarin for 5 years. That has also built me with some leadership as well as like team leading skills, as most time pretty useful when you're applying. And next is arts and design. As mentioned, I did graphic design as well as visual arts. And so by leveraging all of my creativity and also as interest, I also ended up submitting a art portfolio to university, but that's more of like a supplement. And third, I also did research, summer program in different universities. I did a research in economics and sort of a legal economics aspects with a professor from Claremont College. And in terms of summer program, I did the Yale program as well as the one at NYU Chicago. And lastly, I also did some volunteering and that kind of work on the side, which I think could also be beneficial, especially when showing that you actually care and concern for your community and like external environment, not just on yourself.
Perfect. That's really great to hear. We can definitely see how Sheila was like, navigating different kind of programs and extracurricular activities until she realized she's passionate in that field. And moving on, I think it's Ivy next. Should be coming up slowly. Has a slight change. Yes, no?
Not yet.
Okay, let's try again. Yes? No? Still no? Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Ivy, currently a freshman at NYU Stern, and I'm originally from Michigan in the US. So I kind of copied Sheila's little timeline there. But yeah, I grew up in Michigan my whole life, and then I went abroad to Hong Kong to study at a UWC for 2 years for my last years of high school. And that was kind of a weird experience moving from like American public school into such a diverse program, but I definitely think it was very worth it. And I do see a lot of attendees also went to LPC or are going to LPC, so that's really good to see. And now I go to NYU, which is located in the heart of New York City. So also in New York State, but like 5 hours away from Sheila. Yeah, and then in terms of my IB subjects, they're listed up here, but I actually basically chose to take 4 HLs, and this was a decision I made at the beginning because of college credit, just because I kind of want to maximize the amount of credit that I could gain from my IB higher level courses. It's something I had to argue with administration about, and I don't think you can do it at LPC anymore. But I do think it was like in the end pretty manageable compared to what people may think. And then I ended up doing my extended essay in computer science, which was actually not offered at LPC. So if anyone's considering doing an extended essay subject that's like not offered at their school, we can also talk about that later. Oh, you can still take 4 HLs? I did not know that. Yeah, that's cool. And then, okay, yeah, good to know. But junior year summer, similar to Sheila, I also did the U Chicago UWC Global Academy program, which is a fully funded program hosted by U Chicago, like for UWC students. And you also get to meet students who are doing their other scholarship programs, like the Rural Leaders, and I forgot some of the other ones, but everyone was really cool. And then I also went to the UPenn Wharton Leadership in the Business World program shortly after that. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, there we go. So the first question is like, what do I like the most about NYU? I think the main factor that drew me in was really NYU's global focus. It has one of the largest like international student populations in the US, in US colleges, and that's definitely something I was looking for, especially after going to UWC and realizing how impactful of an experience that was, just being around people from so many different cultures. And aside from that, NYU has like 13 of its own study abroad locations. So it makes it really easy for us to go abroad for not just one semester, but a lot of people do 3 semesters. And then Stern itself has the International Business Exchange Program, where you can really easily just exchange at another school entirely for one semester. So these programs definitely drew me in because I knew I wanted to prioritize like getting that global experience in my time during college without spending a lot of extra money traveling. And then next, contrary to what a lot of people think, I actually love not having no campus. I love being in the heart of New York City. I feel like since I was at UWC, I already got my 2 years of campus experience, so it's not something I thought I needed. And I really enjoy like the freedom of just being in the city. And I definitely think there is still a sense of community, which is what draws a lot of people away from NYU. But I see my friends like all across the city at random places. Even if I'm 30 minutes away in Brooklyn, I'm like bound to run into at least 2 NYU students. It happens every time. So I think there's definitely community, especially if you like put yourself out there. And then finally, just the resources and network. I think we are a relatively bigger school, but there's a ton of mentorship programs. It's like one of the biggest emphasis points of Stern is just a ton of mentorship. Like this semester, I probably have like 6 or 7 like mentors. And then I have a bunch of unofficial mentors that are just upperclassmen friends. So that's been really helpful at navigating everything. And for why this major, so I'm currently doing a Bachelor of Science in Business with possible concentrations in finance and sustainable business. That's definitely up to change. That's just what I'm planning for now. But the reason is because I really like the integration of social impact and business. I want to find a way to tie that together. That's kind of the sustainable business focus. And then for finance, it's just because I think it's important to grasp some technical skills needed within business, although it can also be argued that business is not as much of a technical major, which I've come to learn after my first year here. But yeah, we can talk more about that later. And finally, for what my application background was like, in my freshman year of high school, I co-founded a 501c3 nonprofit called Girls for Business, which was essentially trying to bridge a gender gap in business and also bring free K-12 business education to students. And I'm still working with that today, but just as a senior advisor now. And it's definitely been a very rewarding experience. We watch our team grow from nothing to hundreds of students and like got to impact thousands. And I think that was just a really rewarding experience, especially working with a lot of volunteers who were even older than me and inspired me. And then I also dedicated a lot of time to scientific research. So I pursued 3 different like opportunities in different labs. The first one was like related to market research for public health, and the next one was a psych lab, and the third one was machine learning related lab. And in terms of school clubs, I definitely think it's important to kind of experience a lot of different things and put yourself out there and apply for leadership positions if possible. So at LPC, I was the QC leader for the Social Impact Network group. And then at the time, like programming didn't exist yet, but noticing that like gap and that demand for programming, just because we also didn't have a computer science department, I went on to found that QC and find 2 others to help co-found it with me. And then finally, I also did a lot of cultural dance throughout my time in high school. So at LPC, I also led the dragon dance team. And before that, I was on a competitive Bollywood fusion team in Michigan, which is kind of random, but it was very fun. Yeah, I'll pass it over back to Sally now.
That's great to hear. Just conscious of time, we'll move ahead with Hanan and then we'll jump straight into our panel. And Hanan.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Hanan. I come from Syria originally. I lived there my first 16 years of life, and including my first 2 years of high school. After that, I moved to Hong Kong to study at LPC UWC, just like Ivy, Sheila, and Sally. And I graduated in May 2023. You can see my IB subjects. I took HL Biology, Economics, Math, AA, and my SLs were English, Lit, Arabic Lit, and Chemistry. I did my EE in Economics, and I will talk more about the choice of my EE later when I speak about how I chose my major. Throughout my time at UWC, I made sure to be integrated in Hong Kong's community of learning, Lit, Arabic Lit, and Chemistry. I did my EE in Economics, and I will talk more about the choice of my EE later when I speak about how I chose my major. Throughout my time at UWC, I made sure to be integrated in Hong Kong's community of learners, so not only limit myself to the UWC community, which was still very rich, but also I was in a very diverse city that offered a lot of opportunities, so I made sure to use that as well. I participated in various events held by HKU and City University of Hong Kong, and especially after I was a member of Hong Kong University Academy for the Talented, which also gave me a lot of opportunities to do things there. The summer of my junior year, similar to Sheila and Ivy, I also was part of the U Chicago UWC Global Academy program, which is a fully funded program. During my year in that program, there was an academic research part of it. So we spent 3 weeks learning about the program that we joined. Mine was biochemistry. It was like 4 or 5 hours of lectures daily. And it was with a professor, so it was like very academically heavy. And there was also a very interesting social component of it, where we visited Chicago and also met a lot of people and connected with them. So that was really interesting, and I highly recommend that if you're thinking of spending your junior year summer somewhere like that. Of course, I was also doing IB work with all the IAs and EAs, and I was also like still committed to my extracurriculars and the initiatives I founded back home in Syria as well, which I'll be talking about also later. I think we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so what I really like about UPenn is the availability of resources. UWC also had a lot of resources, but when I came to Penn, I realized that there's an infinite amount of things you can do here. So student clubs were like a lot. There were student clubs in areas I could not think about before, like in consulting, and there were student clubs like in various academic areas, like women in mathematics, women in STEM, robotics, all of these things. There were also student communities for people to connect with their cultures and roots. For example, I'm part of the Pan Arab Student Society. There are also centers for women, for LGBTQ members, for like any part of community you feel like you identify with. There are centers, there are clubs for that as well. There are also a lot of like opportunities for you to be a leader and to engage with the community as a leader, especially if you're an international student or you recognize yourself as part of the limited income or first generation students. So you can be on the Dean of Advisory Board. So that also really helps to be engaged with student issues and student communities and help to make the experience better. I also really like the major flexibility and the things you can do with your major. At UPenn, I'm at the School of Arts and Sciences, and that offers me a lot of flexibility to double major or triple major, like unlimited as long as you satisfy the requirements. To have a dual degree program with any of the other schools at UPenn, to submatriculate, which is basically to, like within your 4 years, you graduate with a Bachelor of Arts or Science and a master's degree. And there are also a bunch of study abroad programs where you can do a semester, year, or summer abroad. So I think those opportunities really drew me into Penn. So why I chose this major. What I'm studying right now, I'm an intended mathematical economics major. At UPenn, you do not get to declare your major until the end of your sophomore year. So right now I'm undeclared, but you still need to be talking to a pre-major advisor about your ambitions for a major, because you still need to be satisfying some sort of requirements for your major so that you don't do everything in the last 2 years of your university experience. So why did I choose mathematical economics? It was not always this clear. Like I'm currently like about to start my second semester of my first year, and I know a lot of people are still undeclared and do not know what they want to do. And for me, it was kind of like that when I was in UWC. But don't worry about that. That's totally fine. What I did in UWC, choosing my subjects, I really wanted to have a variety of subjects that kept my options open. So I took, as you saw, I took like STEM courses like biology and chemistry. I also took like mathematics and econ. So I was like potential like biochemistry major. That was an option. Potential econ math major, computer science, or even linguistics, that was also open for me. And I really wanted to explore more of these options to decide on what I want to study. So I did my EE in economics, and I did a summer program in biochemistry, because these were the two areas I found that I was really interested in and I wanted to make a choice. So I think after the summer of my junior year, I came to a realization that I really liked econ and math. And I came to Penn. I put economics as my major in my Common App, but when I came here, I realized that with my IB courses, I had already met like 80% of the math requirement of the econ degree, and I also got a waiver for a few econ courses. So I realized that I have like a waiver for like 4 courses. So I wanted to fill that in with things that I like, and I realized that the mathematical economics degree is kind of what I want right now. So you see, like, it changes. So and I think that's completely fine. And right now I even have the option to double major in mathematics and econ, which I'm also studying. So so yeah, keep your options open, especially if you're coming to the States. Why did I decide on this? Besides like my passion for math and econ, I think it's part of my life has been to like commit to improve the quality of life for others, especially in education, and bridging the gaps in income inequality to help others have equal opportunities. And I think that major touches a lot upon this problem and tries to fix it. So I think it also ties up to my personality and the things that I care about. My application background, similar to the others, I had a high academic performance because you need good like points for good score for your IB to be able to apply to top universities. I also had a variety of extracurricular activities. At UWC, I was involved in the newspaper. I was involved in the basketball team, in the iCycle QC. I think it's still running. It's for tutoring English to high school students in Hong Kong. So it's varied. It's community service, activity, and creativity, just like IB requires. I had a leadership position as well, a few of them throughout the 2 years. And I was also committed to extracurricular activities outside of UWC. In Syria, I co-founded a program for tutoring mathematics, English, and Arabic to underprivileged middle school students that ran for 2 years, where we tutored around 100 students virtually and for free. And I was also running a blog online, which also was some sort of community service, because the purpose of it was to educate the Arabic-speaking community and increase the scientific content published in Arabic. So I think it's really important to have a lot of things to show the university that you're exploring things in a lot of fields, and also be committed to certain ones of them and have leadership positions and try to get out of your comfort zone and try to do new things, initiate new things. I also applied to UPenn as an international student. So that was sort of my background, and I'll pass it back to Sally.
Nice. So attendees, if you have any questions regarding how to best apply to US colleges, if you're international students, you can always, again, like pop the message into the chat. And then it sounds like after going through 3 presentations in a row, it sounds like IB definitely gives you some sort of advantages that you wouldn't be able to find elsewhere if you're doing other international programs. So for example, I think Hanan mentioned the waiver, and then also Ivy mentioned about the credit, and then as well as how you can potentially do your EE research into topics that you're interested in. And you can definitely include that into your college essays, college app essays. So I think that then leads us to the panel. Before the event, I went through the registration form, and I'm seeing a bunch of different questions regarding a lot about the application process. So I guess perhaps we can start with this question on my list. So what kind of advices, panelists, what kind of advices would you give to students in the process of selecting their university and the major, especially in the field of business and economics or mathematical economics? Because these are pretty competitive usually. And what advice or guidance would you recommend our attendees to think about?
I can go. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think first of all, like there's definitely no pressure to know what you're doing. Like just reiterating this because I think especially in today's day and age where like a lot of career recruiting seasons are becoming like or targeting students that are younger and younger, it like seems like there's this big pressure, but genuinely I think like we're all young. No one really knows what they're doing in life. And something I heard that was really important is that you're not really figuring out what you want to do with the rest of your life. You're just figuring out what your next steps are at any point, right? So even if you're in college, that's still what you're doing. And I definitely think like exploring your interests through your classes, through your extended essay, like with the IB program is very interesting. Even if it doesn't help you figure out what you want to do, it helps you figure out what you don't want to do. Like, even though I did my extended essay in computer science and I did do a lot of like extracurriculars related to CS, I think ultimately I can't see myself doing a career like heavily related to that, like in an on-the-desk software engineering job. So I ended up straying away from that path, but like still those experiences were useful for me for learning. And then as for like business, since I specifically applied for like an undergraduate business school, that does narrow my options a little bit since like I would have to transfer out of the business school in order to pursue like a different major altogether. But definitely I think even with that, there's a lot of flexibility with what I can double major in and what I can minor in. So everyone around you is like equally as confused as you are. I think it's just remembering that even if it seems like everyone knows what they want to do, but definitely exploring also through like extracurricular activities, through attending like events such as this one or such as something in any interest, anything you haven't even the smallest interest in, and really like chasing that. Um, Lena says, would you say that they're oh wait, should we wait to answer this later?
Yeah, let's do the Q&A at the end.
Okay.
We can make a note on that. Yep. And I think Hanan, you wanted to say something, right? Go for it.
Adding on to what Ivy has already said, like for choosing your major, I want to touch a little bit upon the point of how to choose your university. For me, it was a very big, like the major was a very big component. I was really passionate about econ, and literally my first steps of like building my college list was like Googling the 10 best universities in economics in the United States or something like that. But I would really say that also consider other factors such as the location. This is also something I really considered. Like I wanted a school that is in an urban area because I really liked Hong Kong, and I really liked that the fact that we were really close to the city center and that it was really accessible to go there. I generally like loud areas like that and like busy and lively cities. So I really think this is a very important thing to consider. I know a few people at Penn dropped out like after their first few weeks here and transferred to another university because they didn't really like that the city was loud and at night and things like that. So I think this is a really important factor to consider along with what you want to study and what is the like background at this university. Does it have a lot of international students if that's something that concerns you, and what financial resources are available there for you?
100% agree with that, because you'll be basically spending 4 years minimum in that location, so you have to choose wisely. Sheila, any thoughts from you?
Sure. I think on top of that, I will talk about more about like the strategic aspect. I think, in case you don't know, like usually the strategy go about selecting a list of university, especially if you're in RPC where the number is limited for US. Is you should think about different, I guess, entry levels for different universities. There's definitely ones that are like harder to get into simply because they accept less students or just more competitive in essence. So it's important to consider all the possibilities and make sure you have options in a day on different difficulties in terms of you will have a place to go to. And secondly is don't apply to university simply because of either the prestige or simply because other people tell you to do so. Because at the end of the day, is you the one who is actually attending the place, spending 4 years of your life there. So it's really important to think about what factors you would consider as important. For example, if you care about the dining hall, if you care about your the safety in the local area, where you care about the professors to faculty ratio, all that kind of stuff. To know what kind of environment you thrive in, and also what of these factors that you prioritize can help you in selecting and filtering out universities. For instance, I know many of our friends, especially many students at UWC, tend to prefer liberal arts schools. But personally, I didn't apply to any of that because I know I want to keep my options open. I want to apply to a place that can offer me the opportunity to explore more subject outside my majors. So I didn't really go for liberal arts schools. So all these considerations, even though US schools do give you a lot of flexibility in changing your path as well as exploring your path later on, but I guess the general environment and vibe or the culture of university are something that you should consider in advance. And on top of that, plan early and don't procrastinate for your IB workload on top of the application. It can become a lot, especially if you're going for the early decision or early actions.
100% agree with that. I think I may not be the best person to speak on behalf of US applications, because I think US, like back then when we were applying, it's like if you go for UK, it's definitely more restricted because you have to declare a specific major when you apply. But then in the US, you get to explore different things in your freshman year and then decide later on. So I think this is also another factor that you want to consider when you're applying. Like, do you want to be stuck with one thing for 3 years? Then go for UK. If you want something more, variety, diversity, explore more, then maybe US. I think that would be better. And then moving on to the next question. So I did hear a lot of rumors. I'm sure that our attendees also have that experience. Like, there are a lot of rumors around how to navigate the entire US application processes. A lot of people were saying that, international students may have a lower chance of getting into top unis in the US compared to local students. So not sure if maybe Ivy and Hanan and Sheila, you guys have any thoughts on this? And perhaps we can try to demystify it a little bit as well.
I think I can answer part of this one. Unfortunately, that's the truth. Especially, again, it varies between schools. But for instance, Cornell, we have so many different colleges, and some of them gets funding from the from New York government. So we have a slightly high portion of New York residents in our university. So for instance, you're applying to the UC school in California, because it's a public school, so oftentimes public school will also take more local students simply because they have this support from the government they need to fulfill, similar as how so that's basically how the system works. But I wouldn't say it's like impossible for international students, and there's definitely a school that care for diversity and care for the variety in their student body. But on the other hand, if you're considering applying for financial aid, you also need to look at if certain school is more need blind or not, because it's oftentimes slightly harder for international students to get approved for financial aid simply because either school don't have the funding or don't have enough capacity to hold that many students.
And Hanan and Ivy?
I'm not very educated on this topic. Like, I cannot give you numbers as in like how many international students are going to be accepted or the rates, because even universities, I don't think they always publish the rates of like acceptance for international students versus domestic students. But I would say like usually like every school has a community of international students, so there's always a chance. But I would also like to highlight the fact that when you're applying as an international student, you're not only applying to that university, you're also in a way applying to enter that country. So you should also be considering factors like you need to be like getting your visa, and sometimes that might be complicated for certain nationalities like mine, especially if you're pursuing a major in research or an area like that. So I think in a way universities consider that, but I cannot say for sure because I'm not very educated on the topic, but I wouldn't say that should deter you from applying. But what I would say is to stay safe is within like the number of universities you're applying to, make sure that some of them has a higher international student rate than the others, or higher population of international students than the others, just to make sure that this does not play as a factor against you.
Cool.
Yeah,
And Ivy?
yeah, I was gonna say I completely agree with everything they both said. I can't really say much on my experience just because like I am from the US, so I did not have to deal with that. But I do think like there are certain schools that really emphasize international student bodies. For example, NYU. I think we're like 30% international. Don't quote me on that, but it's it's a very big proportion. And I do think a lot of like international students do like NYU for that reason. But another thing to keep in mind is NYU sucks at giving international student financial aid. So what we usually find is that like the international student population here is just like majority like top 1% income people. So like again, that's something to consider. But I do think another way to view it is that like having an international background, you can also like kind of frame your story around that to like be your advantage. Definitely like gives you a lot of different perspectives. And nowadays, like a lot of schools want to broaden students' global perspectives. So I think if you can really shape your story to be unique and make that part of your identity not a disadvantage, but like a reason that they should admit you, I think that'll put you at a good spot.
Lovely. Actually, speaking about story, crafting good stories when you're writing your college essays, there are a couple of questions we get from the attendees, and they're like, oh, I'm currently in the process of applying to top US unis, but then I'm struggling to get good inspiration to craft a good one. Like, how would you best present yourself and bringing your unique perspective to the admission officers and be like, hey, you should consider me? So I'm just curious, back then, when you were doing these processes, how did your inspiration come across? How did you get someone to, did you ask anyone to give you feedback on that? What kind of strategies did you play that helped you to actually secure the spot? And was there any interview process involved in that entire application stages?
I can. Oh, maybe you can go ahead. Or, sure, I can start on this one. In terms of the app essays, so there is the Common App core essays that you send to every university, as well as the supplements. So the shorter questions, responses for specific universities. I would just talk about the main essay because I think that's the most important of them all. The main essay is, I think it's still 650 words, something like that. What I did is I took it really as an opportunity to reflect upon my past life for 17 years versus 18 years. Because really what you're trying to do, or at least what I try to do, is to present to the admissions who I am as a person in that short amount of words. So I was trying to pick out what particular situations, what particular experience I had in my life can really shaped who I am, really was my turning point of life. And I tried to really look into and reflect upon these experiences and try to see if there's a common thread that's rooted within who I am, and try to pick that out and emphasize that aspect of me. So because the essay is the only part, or the admission can to know you personally. So I think that's the only way you can show you as a natural person, as opposed to numbers of scores or all that kind of stuff. In terms of the overall strategy, I had friends, of course, looking over it to see how their response was, and also had like many drafts leading up to the final submission. I would say I'm not a person who is really good at creative writing, but I did really structure my essay strategically, seeing that my essay cover topic ranging from a quite long timeline. So, because some people will choose to maybe only focusing on one event and elaborate that, but I'm sort of person I would like to piece the pieces different snippets of experience together. So really see what is the best way to really showcase who you are, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think I can touch a bit upon like how I kind of found my story and that portion. But I think like in general, I'm someone who really likes to reflect and journal. So I think like during the college app process, I probably like journaled more than I had in like the past 3 years. But I think it's just a very reflective process of like finding your own values, finding out like what do you care the most about and how do you want to tell that story of your identity to your audience. And I think it's kind of creating that like maybe one sentence overview of like how you want to be seen and like whether that really aligns truly with your values and then presenting that in a story format. And at first, I read a lot of like example essays, like prior to the summer before senior year. But I think at the end, that kind of like threw me off because I felt like I was getting very affected by other people's writing. I think that really is a personal experience, but for me, I ended up like not reading sample essays closer to when I was writing my own. And at the end, I did have like a few close friends read over my essays, but not too many just because I think like while it is very important to get external feedback, when you do get a lot of random opinions, it's hard to keep that essay as your own. So even when you do get feedback, I think it's important to remember like, hey, if this person's feedback, like you really don't resonate with it, it's okay to simply acknowledge it, say thanks for the feedback, and don't listen to it. Like, I think it's important to hear their opinion on it just as an objective third person, but definitely hold on to the parts of the story that really make it your own. And the only person who can determine that is yourself.
Love that. And Hannah?
I can only just agree more with you guys. Like, my experience really resonates with what you've just said. But I would add that, okay, so me personally, I wrote my personal statement. I did not write a lot of drafts. In fact, I submitted my second one and nobody really went over it, which I really do not recommend. Please like look over your essay a lot of times. And I would say at like sometimes you might like feel like you ran out of ideas or you don't remember what you've done or you feel like you haven't done anything very significant to write about. And I would say that's not true. Your brain is just tired of like constantly thinking about your background and where you came from and all of these things. So I would say in situations like that, maybe do a brainstorming exercise or go to a close family member or friend and ask them like, what is something that you like about me or something that you think I should mention in my essay or something that makes me stand out of other people. And I think these people know a lot about you and may mention things that they admire in you that you may have forgotten or may have not noticed. For me personally, I really like this process can be tedious, but it really helped me know more about myself in the sense that I found out that a lot of choices that I thought were arbitrary in my life, like the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like, the communities I like to engage in, I thought there were things, it's just that it is just a personal preference, but it really is not. When you really reflect about your life journey, you realize that these all tie up to who you are and what things you care about, what are the things you care about, and what are your values really. So I really would say whenever you feel like you're tired of this process and you don't want to go through it, just remind yourself that it's also a personal gain for you.
Love that, love that. I actually heard a lot from my friends back then when we were in that uni application season. And I felt like people who are writing their US Common App, they are being so reflective upon their previous experience. And then it's like it completely changed. So I think, again, like writing your uni app and also writing essays for applications, it is a process that takes time. Like, so that's why please don't leave it till the last minute, because you need time to ponder, to reflect, and then for that inspiration to come across and then try to craft it nicely. So I think that then leads to our final question for today's panel before we open up the floor for Q&A. And basically it's something, again, students are asking a lot, like, is there any good resources or best practices that you would recommend, especially during the time in IB or even before IB? So how should they plan their time out, and how should they manage their time? How should they set their goals while juggling with multiple things on the table, with IB academics, with uni applications, and then as well as extracurricular activities? So if you were to give that one piece of advice to our audience today, panelists, what would you say?
I would say habit building before IB or during IB. Personally, I didn't really start preparing for uni app not until I started IB. So everything I did before was really sort of random, and I was like, didn't really consider, oh, if this is gonna benefit me in terms of application. And I think what benefited me the most in that period is that I kind of know what method works for me in terms of just study or getting things done as well as time management. I think those more of like soft skills rather than like the hard resources are more beneficial for me personally in that I know I can rely on myself in accomplishing this amount of workload in this amount of time and I wouldn't burn out. I think that's important to know how you are responding to stress and how you like juggling between stress. Because I definitely had a sort of transition period going into IB, especially at the beginning. And on top of the future uncertainty of uni applications. So I think building the habit of knowing how to manage yourself is, I think, what helped me the most.
Yeah, I think definitely agree with that. And my one piece of advice would definitely be learning how to prioritize and just being reflective of, again, like, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? And knowing when to prioritize that. And I think once you prioritize things that you genuinely care about, your whole experience is also elevated. So definitely, like, don't do things just because you think they're good for college apps. Still hold on to that passion behind it and prioritize things in the moment that might be more important. And that will really help with time management because at the end of the day, when you have like 8 things to do in one day, it can be very, very overwhelming. But just like being organized with that, using a calendar, and maybe even having like an accountability partner or friend that you can study with or check in with, I think is really helpful. And just on the same note of prioritizing, it's also okay to say no. And I think that's a skill that a lot of people build as they go through IB and as they go through college and even their career in general, is just once you have prioritized, you have to realize what's within your bandwidth to continue maintaining your own mental well-being, which I think is like should be one of your top priorities. And I truly think like if something's not in your bandwidth, it's really okay to say no, and not feel that FOMO of like missing out on something either socially or professionally or academically. Definitely prioritizing, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add that also make sure that you manage your time wisely, but also remember that you do things at your own pace. Sometimes that needs to be like your own pace also has deadlines at some point, but make sure that you're not rushed by what everybody else is doing at the moment. I remember the summer of my, I think the summer of my junior year, I was like the beginning, I was more focused on doing my IB work, and a lot of people were writing their personal statements, so I felt like I was kind of late. But as long as you build your own timeline, I think you will not be late to things, even though that might differ from others. And I would just like to stress out more on Ivy's point of learning how to say no, especially when you're in an environment where there are a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities. Remember that you are making an active choice of what you want to do and what you don't want to pursue. And that is really important in helping you reflect on why you made these choices. In the end, if you want to apply to university, you want to write a good personal statement, and then you only just have a bunch of certificates and a bunch of very good scores, but you don't really know why you did them, then it becomes really hard to write a good personal statement or to highlight the significance of these. So yeah, just make sure you're pursuing an active choice in that.
Perfect. Actually, just really quickly, one bonus question that we gained just now. So there's a question about a question for the panelists. What's the one thing about your uni that prospective applicants should know about, but then they can't find online? So I think this is perhaps more uni specific, and maybe your exclusive insights here today can help them tremendously. If you have a thought, just unmute yourself and go for it.
Yeah, I can start. I touched upon this briefly, but definitely like online you find a ton of things saying like NYU has no campus, NYU has no community. Yeah, sure, we don't have the traditional like college football like games and the like state school experience. But I definitely think like if you want that, you can always take a weekend to like visit a different school and just pretend you're one of their students, or like hop in with your friends. Like a ton of us do that, and I think you can still gain similar experiences if you really want that. But if you are looking for a school with that's smaller and has a campus, then I would say NYU might not be for you. But if you want to be in the city and just kind of have that very free experience, definitely is. And then one more thing that's more towards business schools in general. If you're going to an undergraduate business school, and I'm sure Sheila knows this too at Dyson, undergraduate business schools are extremely pre-professional in nature, which means that starting in your freshman year, like people are going to be talking about career. You're going to be attending like career recruiting events, especially because timelines have moved up. So I think you would have to be mentally prepared to kind of face that and be able to not succumb to pressures around you if like that's something that you want to do business, but you don't want to follow traditional paths, which is kind of like me right now. I think it's very important to consider that aspect of it, and how, because like you're not really doing a different major and then an MBA, but you're just directly doing undergraduate business school, it's very, very career oriented. And that can be a good thing if you are a very career oriented person, but that's another thing to consider.
I think one thing about Penn that other like people do not really know is that it's really easy to connect to upperclassmen and to graduate school students here. If you looked at the statistics, you might know that Penn has a larger population of graduate students than undergrad students, and you might think that the two communities are very separate, but in fact they really are not. In my first in the first month I was here at Penn, I attended a weekend program that had grad school students, so like master and PhD students, and undergraduate freshman students. So it was really easy to connect with them, and I still and ask about their experience and know what they're doing and be friends with them, even though you might think like, oh my God, grad students can sometimes be like 30 or 35 years old and like have families and all of that, but you can still connect with them just as easily. It's also like even in the residence, there are a lot of residences that have students from all the 4 years, so it's not only like first year housing or second year housing only. So I think that's one thing that people don't really know about Penn. if you really want to pursue graduate degree afterwards, there are a lot of people you can connect with, and the university connects you with as well.
I would say about Cornell, actually two things. Firstly, I really underpredicted how large the campus is for Cornell. Um, it was really hard for me the first week of school to really get around campus, simply because we have like our physical location is too thick. I need to take like 10,000 walks daily to get in to go to my classes and go back to my room. But really that also means that before I attended Cornell, I didn't really notice how involved we actually are with the local city and local surroundings and our community, because really we're located in a smaller city that's more not really urban, but that also means when like, whatever we do is really looking at how we can actually contribute and integrate with the local city and local area, because Cornell is founded and built upon this unique place where the previous Native American Cayuga Nation was here. So that whole background had an implication on our education as well as experiences here at Cornell. And adding on top of the know how the campus is so large, it also means we had so many extracurricular as well as like unique course designs that I couldn't really find elsewhere in other universities. For instance, because we have a whole facilities where we create we produce our own ice creams. You can get to take a class that design your own ice cream, and the best one would would be sewing stores for that semester. And also have like a variety of sports that I can really pursue here, all the way from golf, tennis to tree climbing. That's also offered here. So the level of, I guess, community involvement and the diversity as allowed by our location is, I think, sometimes people often ignore.
Amazing, amazing. I think Ivy has to hop off quickly because she has other commitments. But we'll just quickly go through some of the questions in the chat and then we'll call it a day. And yeah, so I think first question from Lena, if it hasn't been answered yet. So is there any chances to get into a business major without having a startup of your own? Maybe Sheila can help to answer this.
Yeah, I think Abby also answered this in the chat. You don't need to have a startup. I don't have a startup yet, but I'm still in an undergrad business school, so that's definitely not true. But you need to understand why you're pursuing business and why you're pursuing certain majors. Not because most people are doing it as well, but because you have your own reason for it. I think that's at least what I valued the most when I was applying.
Okay, and moving on, next question. I think there are a couple of questions around IB grades as well. I know that IB grades are a serious criteria for if you're applying to the UK, but for the US, I think it's relatively more flexible. However, you still have to be, cautious about the jumps between your grades. So any comments from panelists?
I would say personally I had a very stable grade from the 2 predicted grade from my school to final grade. Since you're applying early, so the university won't be looking at your final grade like the UK. So there is no strict requirement on you need to get a 7 on this class in order to get into certain programs. But definitely I think there's a threshold there for certain competitive uni. For instance, an LPC where we went to, I know that you need to hit certain grade level before before our high school was allowed us to apply for early decisions. So definitely keep that in mind if you're considering a particular band of universities or specific universities.
Cool. And Hanan?
Yeah, I would say like the US is less strict than the UK about grades, but also it's not like loose or a loose topic. I think especially like highly ranked universities at some point, I think they have a cutoff for IB scores. But to give you an idea, I would like what I did when I was applying is to go back to the website of the university and look at the statistics or look at the average IB scores of or the IB score range within that university. Sometimes that might scare you. Also look at the resources you're looking at. But I think it gives an idea of like how likely I am to get into this university, or at least on that factor, because in the end, we need to be realistic. But also if you are outside that range, higher or lower, on the higher or lower ends, that should not also like completely deter you from considering this university, because in the end, like it's a distribution. I'm pretty sure there are like outliers, and if you're very like high achieving on other things, or you resonate a lot with the university's student body or student experience, I think there's a high chance of you getting in. But definitely consider grades. And if you're looking to get credits or waivers at this university, you should also be looking at that when you're applying. So for example, like Penn offers waivers for people who get like a 7 in Math AA, but not for people who take Math AI or for people who get lower grades. So I think if that's something that is important for you, you also need to consider that.
Sorry, just quickly adding on to it, because I also see people asking in the chat about like predicted grade and like what's a good grade range. I know a lot of schools, including my school, had a, I guess, more cautious predicted grade they're giving out. So both of my predicted grade for my regular and early decisions are lower than what I actually got for final exam, by quite a few points. Not because I just simply because that your high school wants to make sure they're not overinflating the grades they're giving out, so they tend to downplay a little bit. But that wouldn't impact you too much if you're consistent with what you're getting. But if you like jumps around and varies a lot, that might have certain implication in terms of how stable you perform academically. In terms of what's a good grade range, personally, I would say if you're considering like top 20 U.S. university or Ivy League school, the number we most of the time refer to are a 40 plus for IB, just as a reference. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have that grade, you will be rejected straight away. That's not the case, but that's just sort of the average.
I think I'll just quickly circling back to the point Sheila raised. I think grades is just one part of the component of the entire like criteria they're looking for in terms of application. But obviously, if you have like really good personality, really good story, and then there's other experiences you have that's unique and sets you apart from other people, I think those are also great add-ons to your entire applications. But other than that, if there's no more, Hanan, do you want to say something?
Oh, I kind of touched upon my point earlier, so I think, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good. So if there are no more questions, then I think, yeah, we can wrap things up a little bit. For attendees, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. If you have any specific questions that you want to ask the panelists, or that's more uni specific to NYU or UPenn or Cornell, you can always scan this QR code, follow us on educrate.academy, or visit our website and get in touch with us, and then we will try to get your message across and then help you out in that position. But other than that, we are also doing a series of exciting events before our launch in December. So you can always join our waiting list to stay in the entire loop, and we'll be working on we'll be pushing out this winter boost revision workshops for all of you, either you're in DP1 or DP2, and hope to see some of you there as well. And yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes the entire session. And don't worry if you would like to go back to any of the details from the previous slide. We'll be sending all these materials to you, so keep an eye on your email. But other than that, I think we're all good. And yeah, apologies for running a bit over time, but hope you enjoyed the session.